stood 7 feet 2 inches tall. Bruce Lee was barely 5 feet 8. One man was becoming one of the most dominant basketball players America had ever seen. The other was a martial artist who believed that speed, timing, and efficiency mattered more than size. On paper, they had almost nothing in common. Yet one of the tallest athletes in the world would eventually walk into Bruce Lee's training space to learn how to fight. His name was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but when he first met Bruce Lee, the world knew him by another name, Lew Alcindor. And what happened between these two men would eventually lead to one of the most unforgettable fight scenes Bruce Lee ever filmed. But the fight was not where their story began. It began with a question. Could a man who was already enormous become even more effective by learning how to move like someone much smaller? In the late 1960s, Lew Alcindor was already a phenomenon at UCLA. He was not an ordinary college basketball player. He was physically overwhelming, unusually coordinated for his size, and already developing a reputation that would eventually carry him into NBA history. But basketball was not the only thing that interested him. He had already explored martial arts, including Aikido, and he wanted to understand movement in a deeper way. That was when Bruce Lee entered his life. Bruce was teaching Jeet Kune in Los Angeles. He was not teaching people how to become larger. He was teaching them how to eliminate unnecessary movement. For Bruce, efficiency was everything. Why waste energy moving farther when a smaller movement could accomplish the same thing? Why rely on strength when timing could do the work? Why wait for an attack when you could intercept it before it fully developed? For someone like Kareem, those questions were especially interesting because Kareem already had what most fighters wanted: reach, height, strength, a massive physical presence. Bruce had something completely different: speed, precision, explosiveness, and an understanding of movement that went beyond traditional martial arts. The contrast between them was almost absurd. When the two men stood next to each other, Bruce looked tiny. But Bruce never seemed intimidated by the difference. Instead, he saw an opportunity. Kareem's body was not a problem that needed to be overcome. It was an advantage that needed to be understood. Bruce adapted his teaching to the person standing in front of him. And Kareem began to discover that martial arts could influence much more than fighting. It could influence basketball. Every unnecessary movement cost energy. Every wasted step created a delay. Every moment of hesitation gave an opponent an opportunity. That philosophy began to make sense. Kareem later described Bruce as an innovator who pushed martial arts forward. And that was exactly what Bruce wanted his students to understand. He did not want them to blindly copy movements. He wanted them to understand why the movement existed in the first place. That difference mattered, because Bruce was not simply teaching Kareem how to punch or kick. He was teaching him how to think about movement. And the student was already becoming one of the most remarkable athletes in the country. There was another side to their relationship too. Bruce Lee was not simply a martial arts instructor surrounded by celebrities. He was intensely curious about the people around him. His students came from different backgrounds: actors, athletes, martial artists, intellectuals. Kareem was different from Bruce in almost every obvious way, but the two men connected on a deeper level. They were both interested in ideas. They both questioned convention, and both understood what it meant to be viewed through the expectations of other people. That friendship eventually became strong enough that Kareem would become more than Bruce's student. He would become part of Bruce's cinematic vision. Bruce Lee was working on a movie unlike anything he had made before. The project was called Game of Death. And Bruce wanted the film to represent something bigger than a series of fights. The concept involved a fighter moving through a series of opponents, each representing a different style and philosophy of combat. And eventually, Bruce wanted Kareem Abdul-Jabbar standing in his way. Think about that image. A 5'8" martial artist standing opposite a 7'2" basketball superstar, Bruce in his famous yellow tracksuit, Kareem towering over him. The physical contrast was almost too perfect to be real, but it was real, and Bruce knew exactly how to use it. The fight was not supposed to be a simple contest of strength. Bruce wanted movement, distance, timing, adaptation. Kareem's height became part of the visual language of the fight. His reach made him dangerous. His size made him difficult to approach, and his presence made Bruce look even smaller. But Bruce Lee's philosophy was built around exactly this kind of problem. How do you deal with an opponent who has an obvious physical advantage? You don't try to become him. You find another solution. The fight sequence was filmed in Hong Kong, and Kareem later remembered the experience as physically demanding. The two men were not simply standing in front of a camera, pretending to fight. They were performing an extended martial arts sequence that required timing, coordination, and physical commitment. The result became one of the most recognizable images connected to Bruce Lee. But there was something tragic about the scene that nobody could have known at the time. Bruce would never finish the film as he had originally intended. Production on Game of Death was interrupted when Bruce left to make Enter the Dragon. That decision would change everything. Enter the Dragon became the film that transformed Bruce Lee into a global icon. But Bruce never returned to complete Game of Death in the way he had planned. On July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee died suddenly at the age of 32. Kareem was devastated. He had lost a teacher, a friend, and someone he believed had influenced the way he looked at movement and preparation. The man who had once taught him to pay attention to efficiency was suddenly gone. Kareem would later continue his basketball career and build one of the greatest resumes in the history of professional sports. 6 NBA championships, 6 MVP awards, a career that made him one of the most accomplished athletes of all time. And yet, Bruce Lee remained part of the story, because the lessons did not disappear when the teacher did. The most interesting part of their relationship was never that Bruce Lee could defeat a 7'2" basketball player. That was never the point. Kareem was not Bruce's enemy. He was his student, and Bruce did not need to defeat Kareem to prove anything. Instead, he looked at a man whose body seemed almost impossible to fight against and asked a different question. How can this body move more efficiently? That question says almost everything about Bruce Lee's philosophy. He didn't believe that one size fit everyone. He didn't believe that one martial art had every answer. And he didn't believe that strength alone determined the outcome. He believed you had to understand the person in front of you, understand the situation, understand your own limitations, and then adapt. That may be why the image of Bruce Lee standing in front of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar remains so powerful. It looks like a mismatch. The giant against the smaller man. The basketball superstar against the martial artist. Strength against speed, size against time. But Bruce Lee never saw it that way. He saw two people with completely different abilities, trying to understand what the other could teach them. Kareem could teach Bruce things too. Their relationship was not simply one-directional. Bruce was a student of the people around him as much as he was a teacher. Kareem later described how Bruce's ideas about preparation and dealing with challenges could apply far beyond physical combat. That may be the real legacy of their friendship, because the lesson was never that a smaller man can always beat a bigger man. The lesson was that size is only one variable. Strength is only one variable. Talent is only one variable. What matters is what you do with what you have. Bruce Lee understood that, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar understood it too. Years after Bruce's death, the image of the two men still tells the story better than almost any explanation could. One man was 5'8". The other was 7'2". One became famous for fighting. The other became famous for basketball. But for a brief period in Los Angeles, those two worlds crossed. A future basketball legend became the student of a martial artist who was still trying to redefine his own art. And eventually, that student would stand across from his teacher on a movie set, towering above him as cameras captured a fight that would become legendary. Bruce Lee didn't need Kareem to be smaller. He needed him to be himself. And perhaps that was the real lesson Bruce Lee was trying to teach. You don't overcome your differences by becoming someone else. You learn how to use exactly what you have. That is what made Kareem Abdul-Jabbar such a fascinating student. And that is what made Bruce Lee such a fascinating teacher. Because when a 7'2" giant walked into Bruce Lee's world, Bruce didn't see a giant. He saw movement, he saw possibility, and he saw another person who could learn to become more efficient, more precise, and more fully himself. The fight they eventually filmed lasted only minutes, but the friendship behind it lasted for years. And that is why the story of Bruce Lee and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was never really about who would win a fight. It was about why two men who looked like they had nothing in common found something to learn from each other.